The council chamber stretched out like a vast cathedral of light and metal. Hundreds of species filled the tiered seating, each delegation marked by their own unique biology. Some breathed methane through filters. Others floated in containment fields. A few existed as pure energy, their consciousness held in crystalline matrices. Day One stood beside Ambassador Kyung-soo at the human delegation table. His hands were steady, but his heart hammered in his chest. This was humanity's first major treaty negotiation since joining the Galactic Council 2 years ago. Everything had to go perfectly. Remember, Kyung-soo whispered in Korean, "Let me do the talking. You just need to observe and take notes." Daewon nodded. At 34, he was the youngest member of the diplomatic corps to attend a council session. He had studied Xena diplomacy for a decade, memorized the customs of 40 different species, and practiced proper greeting gestures until his arms ached. He was ready for this. The council speaker, Thalman, raised 3 of his 6 arms. His voice echoed through translation devices worn by every delegate. We begin discussions on the Frontier Development Treaty. All parties must speak truthfully and with clear intent. From a side entrance, a figure glided into the chamber. Daewon recognized the species immediately, a Palaxian. The being moved with liquid grace, its body covered in silvery skin that shimmered under the lights. Delicate tentacles framed a face that was almost humanoid, with large dark eyes that seemed to look through rather than at things. "The mediator Velanoth will ensure honest communication," Thalman announced. As is tradition, Velanoth will verify the intentions of all speakers. Daewon had read about this. Palaxians were telepaths, able to read surface thoughts and emotions through physical contact. They served as living lie detectors in important negotiations. The practice made many species uncomfortable, but it had prevented countless wars. Humans had agreed to the custom when joining the council. The negotiations began smoothly. Ambassador Kyung-soo presented humanity's proposal for joint development of 3 frontier systems. The resources would be shared, the planets colonized carefully to preserve any native ecosystems. Other species countered with their own terms. Standard diplomatic backdash and dash forth dot. Then came the sticking point. A delegate from the Korthian Empire accused humanity of hiding military installations in the proposed zones. The accusation hung in the air like poison. "That is absolutely false," Kyung-soo said firmly. "We have no military presence in those systems." "Verification is requested," the Korthian delegate clicked through its translator. Thalman looked to Velanoth. The Palaxian mediator nodded and approached the human table. Daewon felt Jihai, their security officer, tense behind him. Her hand moved closer to her sidearm, not threatening, just ready. "Who will submit to verification?" Velanoth asked. The voice was melodious, almost like singing. Kyung-soo started to step forward, but Velanoth's dark eyes fixed on Daewon, the young one. His thoughts will be clearer, less clouded by diplomatic training. Daewon's mouth went dry. This wasn't in the briefing. He glanced at Kyung-soo, who gave a slight nod. "Permission granted." "Of course," Daewon said, proud that his voice didn't shake. Vel single quotes. Noth moved closer. The tentacles around the Palaxian's face swayed gently, as if tasting the air. "Do not be afraid. You will feel a slight pressure, nothing more. I will know if your delegation speaks truth about the military installations." "We are telling the truth," Daewon said. "Then you have nothing to fear." Velanoth raised one slender hand. The fingers were long and delicate, ending in soft pads rather than nails. The chamber fell silent. Even the constant background hum of translation devices seemed to fade away. The hand touched Daewon's temple. For a moment, nothing happened. Daewon wondered if he was supposed to feel something. He tried to think clearly about the frontier systems, about the truth of humanity's peaceful intentions, About Velanoth's eyes went wide. The large dark pupils dilated until they nearly swallowed the whites entirely. The tentacles around the Palaxian's face went rigid, standing out like quills. Then Velanoth screamed. It wasn't the sound Day One had heard from any living thing. It was pure terror mixed with pain, a psychic shriek that needed no translation. The Palaxian stumbled backward, hand jerking away from Day One's head as if burned. Velanoth's legs buckled, and the graceful being collapsed onto the polished floor. Chaos erupted instantly. Several other beings in the chamber cried out. Day One realized with horror that they were telepaths too, not as powerful as Velanoth, but sensitive enough to feel something of what the Palaxian had experienced. A crystalline entity shattered its containment field. A floating species dropped like a stone. Security forces materialized from every direction. Weapons were drawn energy rifles, plasma projectors, devices Day One couldn't even name. All of them pointed at the human delegation. "Don't move," Ji-Hai barked in Korean, stepping in front of Day One. Her own weapon was out now, not aimed at anyone but ready. Two other human security officers formed a protective triangle around the diplomats. "What did you do?" Thalmon's voice boomed through the chamber. The council speaker's 6 arms were all raised, a gesture of extreme alarm. "Nothing," Kyung-Soo shouted. "We did nothing." He just touched. Medical teams rushed to Velanoth. The Palaxian was convulsing on the floor, tentacles writhing, that terrible sound still coming from somewhere deep inside. Other telepaths were being helped from the chamber, some unconscious, others babbling in their native languages. Day-1 stood frozen. He looked down at his hands as if they might have transformed into weapons without his knowledge. What had happened? He had just stood there. He had just thought about the treaty, about being honest, about doing his job well. Normal thoughts. Human thoughts. A Palaxian medical officer placed a device against Velanoth's head. The screaming stopped, replaced by shallow, rapid breathing. Velanoth's were still open, still wide with terror, staring at nothing. Thalmon's voice cut through the chaos. "This session is suspended. The human delegation will be escorted to secure quarters. Immediately. We are willing to cooperate fully," Kyung-Soo said, hands raised in a peaceful gesture. "But we need to understand what happened. We meant no harm." "Intentions are irrelevant," Thalmon said coldly. "Your presence has harmed one of our most respected mediators. Until we understand how and why, you will be isolated." Armed guards surrounded the humans, not attacking, but making the situation clear. Ji-Hai looked ready to fight, but Kyung-Soo shook his head. "Stand down. We cooperate." As they were led from the chamber, Day One looked back. Velanoth was being lifted onto a medical stretcher. The Palaxian's head turned, just slightly, dark eyes finding Day One across the distance. The Palaxian's lips moved. No sound came out, but the medical officer leaning close went pale, if a being with blue skin could go pale. The officer looked at Day One with something that might have been fear or might have been awe. Later, Day One would learn what Velanoth had whispered. An ocean. An endless, screaming ocean. How do they survive it? But in that moment, being marched out of the council chamber under armed guard, Day One only knew one thing with absolute certainty. First contact had gone well 2 years ago. Humanity had been welcomed into the galactic community with open arms and genuine curiosity. They had been the promising newcomers, the fresh perspective, the species everyone wanted to know. That era had just ended. Now, the galaxy was afraid of them, and Day One had no idea why. The human delegation quarters on Station Harmony had been designed to be welcoming. Soft lighting that mimicked Earth's sun. Furniture built for human proportions. Even the air smelled faintly of pine, pumped in through environmental controls to ease homesickness. Now it felt like a very comfortable prison. Day One sat on a couch, staring at his hands. He had been staring at them for 2 hours. They looked normal. They felt normal. He flexed his fingers, turned them over, examined the palms. Just hands. Human hands that had done nothing except exist in the wrong place at the wrong time. "Stop it," Ji-Hai said from her position by the door. "You're going to drive yourself crazy." "I hurt someone," Day One said quietly. "I hurt them badly just by existing near them." "You didn't know." "None of us knew." Ambassador Kyung-soo paced back and forth across the room. He had been doing that since they arrived 3 hours ago. They should have warned us. They should have tested for this kind of incompatibility before letting us into the council chamber. "Maybe they didn't know either," said Hana. The psychologist had been quiet until now, sitting in a corner with a tablet, reviewing everything she could find about Palaxian telepathy. Every species they've encountered before must have been compatible. We might be the first exception. The door chimed. Everyone tensed. Ji-Hai's hand went to her weapon before she caught herself. Not prisoners, she had to remember. Just protectively isolated. That's what Thalman had called it. A holographic display activated near the door. Thalman's face appeared, along with another being Day One didn't recognize. This one looked almost like an octopus made of crystal, with tentacles that ended in what might have been hands or might have been sensory organs. "Ambassador Kyung-soo," Thalman said. "This is Dr. Kikstal, Chief of Palaxian Neuroscience. There have been developments. How is Velanoth?" Kyung-soo asked immediately. "Stable," Dr. Kikstal said. The translator gave the voice a precise, clinical quality, but still unconscious. "We have sedated the mediator to prevent further trauma." "Further trauma from what?" Day One couldn't help asking. Dr. Kikstal's crystalline tentacles shifted. "From the memories. Velanoth continues to experience the contact even though it ended hours ago. We call this cascade trauma. It occurs when a telepath encounters a mind too chaotic to process safely." "But I wasn't trying to hurt anyone," Day One said. "I was just thinking." "Normal thinking. That is precisely what we need to understand," Dr. Kikstal said. "With your permission, I would like to interview all members of your delegation to understand how human thoughts function." Kyung-soo looked at his team. They all nodded. "Whatever you need." Over the next day, Dr. Kikstal spoke with each human separately, asking strange questions. What were they thinking about during breakfast? Could they think about 2 things at once? When they remembered something, did they see it like a picture or hear it like sounds? Did they ever argue with themselves in their own heads? Day One answered honestly, though many questions seemed odd. Yes, he could think about multiple things at once. He often did. Right now he was answering questions, but also worried about Velanoth, and also remembering his mother's face when he left for the diplomatic corps, and also aware of the temperature in the room, and also composing what he might say if called to testify, and also wondering what Earth was being told about all this. "Fascinating," Dr. Kikstal said, tentacles quivering. "And disturbing." "Why disturbing?" "Because what you describe should be impossible." Dr. Kikstal showed Day One a holographic image. It looked like a flowing river, smooth and calm, moving in one clear direction. Colors shifted gently through it, but the overall pattern was peaceful, almost meditative. "This is a Palaxian mind during normal thought," Dr. Kikstal explained. "One primary thought stream, with emotional context flowing alongside it, clear, ordered. This is what we expect from all sapient beings." The image changed. What appeared next made Day One flinch. It was a storm, a hurricane of light and color and movement, with dozens of streams intersecting, diverging, colliding. Thoughts branching into thoughts, into more thoughts. Emotions bleeding into memories, bleeding into hypothetical scenarios. And underneath it all, a constant background roar of awareness sounds. Sensations, half-formed ideas, snippets of songs, random words. This, Dr. Kickstall said quietly, is what Velanoth encountered in your mind. And this is just approximation based on what the mediator described before losing consciousness. The reality was apparently much worse. Day one stared at the chaos on the display. That's what my brain looks like. That is what all human brains look like, according to our scans and interviews. But that's just normal thinking, Day one protested. That's what thinking feels like. I don't know any other way. Precisely the problem, Dr. Kickstall said. The news spread through the station fast. By the second day, the human delegation could watch broadcasts from across the galaxy. Many were calling for humanity to be expelled from the council. Some wanted humans quarantined to their home system permanently. A few radical groups suggested worse solutions. They're afraid of us, Jahai said, watching a particularly hostile broadcast from a species called the Vexery. Actually afraid. Can you blame them? Hannah said. Imagine if we met aliens and just being near them gave us seizures. We'd be terrified too. A council emergency session was called. The humans could only watch via a hologram. They weren't allowed to physically attend to dangers, the council said. Several telepathic species had threatened to walk out if humans were present in the chamber. Councillor Rixman, a massive being covered in armor plating, spoke first. His voice was harsh, aggressive. The humans are a psychic hazard. They should never have been granted council membership. I move for immediate quarantine protocols. Argument erupted. Some species agreed. Others, particularly those without telepathic abilities, found the whole thing absurd. How could humans be dangerous just for thinking? You don't understand, a telepathic delegate said. It's not about danger like a weapon. It's about safety. Being near them is like standing next to a sun. The radiation of their consciousness is too much. We didn't ask to be like this, Kyung-Soo said, his hologram standing in the council chamber, even though his body remained in quarantine. We didn't know we were different in this way. But we've lived with our own minds forever. We've built civilizations, created art, explored space. If our minds are so chaotic, how have we achieved so much? Perhaps you're insane by our standards and simply don't know it. Rixvin suggested. Hannah spoke up then, her hologram appearing beside Kyung-Soo. Or perhaps your standards are incomplete. You've judged all intelligence by telepathic standards. You've assumed that ordered thought is the only valid thought. But humans prove that complex, chaotic cognition can be just as effective. Effective at harming telepaths, Rixvin shot back. That night, Day one couldn't sleep. He lay in his quarters, feeling his brain work. He had never thought about thinking before. It had always just happened. But now he tried to observe it, to understand what made human minds so different. Thoughts came from everywhere. A memory of his first day at the Diplomatic Academy. Worry about tomorrow's council vote. The feeling of the sheets against his skin. A song stuck in his head. Wondering if his family on Earth was worried. Imagining what Velanoth must have felt. Guilt about causing pain. Hope that this could be resolved. Fear that it's COULDN single quotes D. All of it happening at once. All of it real. All of it part of who he was. Dr. Kickstall contacted them in the morning with new information. I've been studying your brain scans and comparing them to other species. I believe I know why you're so different. The human delegation gathered around the holographic display. Most species think linearly, Dr. Kickstall explained. One thought leads to another, like links in a chain. Even species with enhanced intelligence follow this pattern. They think faster, process more complex chains, but it's still fundamentally linear. And humans? Kyung-Soo asked. Humans think in networks. Your brains evolved for something most species never needed: complex social dynamics among large groups. You had to track who knew what, who liked whom, who might betray whom. You had to simulate other people's thoughts to predict their behavior. Your survival depended on it. So our chaos is actually a feature, not a bug? Han asked. Exactly. You're not insane. You're specialized. But that specialization makes you incompatible with telepathic species who expect minds to be orderly. The council vote was scheduled for the next day. No one knew which way it would go. Earth watched nervously. The human delegation prepared their final statement, and in a medical bay deep in the station, Valenoth finally woke up, trembling but conscious, and asked to speak with Dr. Kickstal immediately. What the Palaxian mediator said next would change everything. The council chamber felt different when humans weren't physically present. Day one watched through the holographic link and noticed how the other delegates sat more relaxed, how the telepathic species no longer clustered at the far side of the room. His absence made them comfortable. That hurt more than he expected. The emergency session will now begin, Thalman announced. His 6 arms gestured to the assembled representatives. We must decide humanity's future in the Galactic Council. 3 options are before us. Full quarantine, restricting humans to their home system. Limited membership, allowing trade and communication but barring them from council facilities. Or continued integration with appropriate safety measures. There is a 4th option, Councillor Rixvan said, rising to his full height, the armor being towered over most others in the chamber. Expulsion. Complete removal from the council. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Expulsion had never been used before, not in the 8,000 years of the council's existence. It was a punishment reserved for species that committed genocide or violated the fundamental laws of civilized space. Humans have committed no crime, a delegate from the peaceful Morali people said. How can we punish them for their biology? Their biology is the crime, Rixvan countered. They are weapons that walk and talk. Every human is a potential psychic bomb waiting to detonate in the minds of telepaths. Kyung-Soo's hologram flickered as he fought to control his anger. We are not weapons. We are people. We have families, dreams, cultures. We've done nothing except exist. Existing near telepaths causes them harm, Rixvan said flatly. Therefore, you are dangerous. Another delegate spoke up, a floating being composed of shifting geometric patterns. I propose we study this phenomenon more carefully before making permanent decisions. Perhaps there is a solution we haven't considered. How many telepaths must suffer while we study? Demanded a representative from a species with large, multifaceted eyes. Valenoth is still recovering. Others who were in the chamber that day report nightmares, intrusive thoughts. The damage is real. From his quarantine quarters, Day One felt his stomach twist. He had done that. His thoughts, just existing in his head, had caused nightmares for beings he had never meant to harm. The debate continued for hours. Some species argued for mercy, others for caution. A few suggested that humans might be lying about not being able to control their chaotic thoughts. Maybe it was a weapon they could turn on and off. Maybe they were playing innocent while planning something sinister. That's paranoid nonsense, Hannah said, watching the proceedings with the rest of the human delegation. We've been part of the council for 2 years. We've traded peacefully, shared technology, honored every agreement. Why would we suddenly turn hostile? Fear makes people irrational, Jihai said. They're scared, so they're seeing threats everywhere. Then Dr. Kickstal entered the chamber. The Palaxian scientist moved to the center speaking platform. Crystalline tentacles moving in a pattern that Day One had learned meant deep concern. Honored Council, Dr. Kickstal began. I have spent 3 days studying human cognition. I have interviewed each member of their delegation, scanned their brain patterns, and consulted with our best neuroscientists. I have also spoken at length with Velanoth, who has provided crucial insights into what occurred during the contact. The chamber fell silent. Every being leaned forward, eager to hear. Humans are not lying about being unable to control their thoughts. Their brains literally cannot function in the linear, ordered way that telepaths expect. To ask them to think differently would be like asking us to breathe water instead of air. It is fundamentally impossible. Then they cannot be integrated safely, Rixvan said. I did not say that. Dr. Kickstall's display activated, showing the same images Day One had seen, the calm river of normal thought versus the hurricane of human consciousness. What I said is that humans cannot change, but perhaps we can adapt. Interested murmurs rippled through the chamber. Telepaths have shields, Dr. Kickstall continued. We use them when entering hostile environments or when dealing with species that have mental defenses. These shields could be enhanced specifically for human contact. With proper preparation and protection, telepaths can interact with humans safely. That puts the burden on us, a telepathic delegate objected. Why should we have to shield ourselves just because humans are mental hazards? Because they are people, Dr. Kickstall said simply. And people deserve consideration. The debate shifted. Some saw Dr. Kickstall's solution as reasonable. Others insisted it didn't go far enough. Rixman argued that requiring telepaths to constantly shield themselves around humans was itself a form of oppression. Then a message came through on the emergency channel. Velanoth requested to address the council remotely. The Palaxian mediator was still too weak to attend physically, but insisted on speaking. Thalman hesitated, then granted permission. A holographic projection appeared. Velanoth, looking diminished and tired, the silvery skin less lustrous than before. Honored Council, Velanoth's voice was quiet but clear. I am the one who suffered the most from contact with the human mind. I believe I should have a voice in this decision. Of course, Thalman said. Please, share your perspective. Velanoth's dark eyes seemed to look past the camera, seeing something distant. When I touched Day One's mind, I was unprepared. It was like stepping into a storm that I did not know existed. I nearly drowned in it. Rixman looked triumphant. You see? They are dangerous. I have not finished, Velanoth said, and there was steel in the quiet voice. Yes, the experience was traumatic. Yes, I will carry the memory of it for the rest of my life. But in the days since, as I have recovered and reflected, I have come to understand what I truly experienced. The chamber waited. I experienced a mind that processes information in ways we cannot fathom. A mind that thinks about dozens of things simultaneously, that holds contradictory emotions at once, that constantly simulates other people's perspectives. It was chaos, yes, but it was also beautiful. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably. Beautiful was not a word anyone had used to describe human cognition yet. Humans live every moment of their lives in what we would consider a state of mental emergency, Velanoth continued. The noise, the chaos, the constant storm of consciousness that is their normal. And yet they function. They build, create, love, dream. They are not insane. They have simply evolved a form of intelligence that we, in our telepathic certainty, never imagined possible. That does not make them safe, Rixvan insisted. No, Velanoth agreed. It makes them different. But different is not the same as dangerous. I could touch a star with my bare tentacle and be burned. That does not make the star evil. It makes me foolish for touching it without protection. Day One felt something loosen in his chest. Velanoth understood. The being he had heard understood. Another voice joined the discussion, one that made everyone turn. It came from a section of the chamber reserved for the collective voice. a hive mind species that rarely participated in debates. When they spoke, it was with the combined wisdom of millions. "We have listened to this debate with interest," the collective voice said. Each word seemed to come from everywhere at once. "We recognize something in humans that others may not see." "And what is that?" Dalman asked. "They are like us," the collective voice said. "We are many beings sharing one consciousness. They are one being experiencing many consciousnesses. They have learned to simulate others, to think from multiple perspectives, to hold entire social networks in their individual minds. They are singular beings who taught themselves to think as a collective." The comparison stunned the chamber into silence. "We do not fear them," the collective voice continued. "We recognize them. And we believe that expelling or quarantining a species for being neurodivergent would set a dangerous precedent. What if tomorrow you discover another species that processes information differently? Will you exile them too? Where does it end?" The debate continued late into the night. Arguments flew back and forth. Statistics were presented. Historical precedents were examined. Through it all, the human delegation could only watch and wait. Finally, Dalman called for order. "We have heard much today. Tomorrow, we vote. I suggest all delegates consult with their governments tonight. This decision will shape the future of the Council." The session ended. The holographic link closed. The human delegation sat in their quarantine quarters, exhausted and uncertain. "Do you think they'll let us stay?" Day one asked. Kyung-soo was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know. But Velanoth gave us a chance. And the collective voice supported us. That has to count for something." Ji-hai stood and looked out the window at the stars beyond the station. "If they vote to quarantine us, Earth will never forgive the galaxy. We'll remember this. Being exiled just for thinking differently. Then, let's hope it doesn't come to that," Hana said. That night, across the galaxy, billions watched and waited. On Earth, humans went about their daily lives with an undercurrent of anxiety. Children asked their parents if they would have to leave the stars behind. Elderly people who remembered the years before first contact wondered if isolation had been better after all. And in the council chamber, delegates made their choices, knowing that tomorrow everything would change. The message from Thalman came just before the vote was scheduled to begin. It was short, formal, and completely unexpected. The council has agreed to postpone the vote for 1 week. Humanity has requested an opportunity to demonstrate that peaceful coexistence is possible. This request has been granted. Details will follow. Kyung-soo lowered the tablet and looked at his team. "Who requested a demonstration?" "I certainly didn't." From the back of the room, a voice spoke up. "I did." Everyone turned. A man in his 50s stood in the doorway, flanked by station security. He wore civilian clothes and carried a worn satchel. His face was weathered but kind, with deep lines around his eyes that suggested a lifetime of studying difficult problems. "Professor In-soo," Kyung-soo said, recognizing him from the diplomatic briefings. "You're from the Xenopsychology department at Seoul University. What are you doing here?" "I arrived on the first transport after the incident," In-soo said, stepping into the room. "Earth sent me to help, and I think I have a solution." Over the next hour, Professor In-soo explained his idea. He had spent 30 years studying how different species processed information. He had worked with dozens of alien psychologists, mapping the ways consciousness could manifest across different biologies. And he believed humans could learn to control their chaotic thoughts enough for safe telepathic contact. Not permanently, he clarified, and not naturally, but with training, meditation, and intense focus, a human can narrow their thought streams down to something manageable, something a telepath could touch without being overwhelmed. "Like putting a dam in a river?" Hannah asked. More like channeling a storm into a single lightning bolt, Insu said. The energy is still there, but focused, directed, controlled. Day one listened with growing unease. How hard is this to learn? Very hard, Insu admitted. It goes against every instinct of human cognition. Our brains want to multitask, to simulate, to branch and explore. Forcing them into a single stream of thought is painful, exhausting. Most people can only maintain it for a few seconds before the chaos returns. But it's possible? Kyung-soo pressed. With the right person and the right training, yes. We need a volunteer from the human delegation and a volunteer from the Palaxian telepaths. 1 week to train. 1 demonstration in front of the council. If we can prove that contact is possible with preparation, it might change the vote. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. Whoever volunteered would have to learn to fight against their own mind, to suppress the very thing that made them human. And if they failed, if the demonstration went wrong, it would doom humanity's chances completely. I'll do it, Daewon said. Ji-hai immediately protested. You've already been through enough. You don't have to volunteer for this. Yes, I do, Daewon said firmly. I was the one Velanoth touched. I was the one who caused this crisis. I should be the one to help fix it. Kyung-soo studied him carefully. Are you sure? Professor In-soo said it would be painful. I'm sure. The demonstration was approved. A special facility was constructed on the station, a testing chamber with observation, windows where the council could watch safely. Medical teams from multiple species stood ready. And most importantly, they needed a Palaxian volunteer. Dr. Kickstall brought the news 2 days later. A young telepath named Nalin has volunteered. She believes in human innocence and wants to help prove it. Why would she risk it? Hannah asked. After what happened to Velanoth? Because, Dr. Kickstall said quietly, she has studied human literature, human music, human art. She believes any species capable of creating such beauty cannot be inherently dangerous. She wants to prove that belief. The training began immediately. Professor In-soo guided day one through meditation techniques adapted from various Earth traditions, Buddhist mindfulness, Stoic philosophy, modern cognitive behavioral therapy. But none of it worked the way it did for humans trying to calm their minds. This wasn't about relaxation. This was about suppression. Focus on a single thought, In-soo instructed. One idea, one phrase. Let everything else fade. Day one tried. He chose a simple phrase, we mean no harm. He repeated it in his mind over and over, trying to make it the only thing that existed in his consciousness. But his brain fought back. Memories intruded. Worries surfaced. He noticed the temperature of the room, the sound of ventilation, the ache in his back from sitting too long. His mind wanted to think about everything at once. It hurts, Daewon gasped after 20 minutes. It feels like holding my breath. That's accurate, In-soo said. You're suffocating part of your cognition. Your brain is designed to process multiple streams. Forcing it to stop is like telling your heart to beat slower. It can be done, but not comfortably. They practiced for hours each day. Day one would focus until his head pounded, until sweat ran down his face, until he felt like screaming just to release the pressure. And each time, he could only maintain the single stream focus for 30 seconds at most before the chaos returned. Is this even possible? Daewon asked on the 4th day, exhausted and discouraged. Maybe human minds can't be controlled like this. They can't, In-soo agreed. Not for long. But we don't need long. We need 30 seconds. One clear contact, long enough for Nalin to sense your peaceful intent. That's all. Nalin visited the training facility on the 5th day. She was young for a Palaxian, her silvery skin still bright, her movements quick and curious. She watched through the observation window as Day One struggled through another meditation session. Afterward, she entered the room. Day One tensed instinctively, remembering what had happened to Velanoth. "Don't be afraid," Nalan said gently. "I'm shielded right now. I can't read your thoughts from this distance." "Why are you doing this?" Day One asked. "You know it might hurt you." "Because fear should not dictate policy," Nalan said. "I have read your poetry, listened to your music. Any species that creates Beethoven and writes Rumi cannot be evil. I want to prove that to my people. What if I fail? What if I can't control my thoughts enough? Then I will be hurt, and the council will vote to quarantine your species," Nalan said simply. "But I believe you will succeed. I have faith in you." The demonstration was scheduled for the 7th day. News spread across the galaxy. Billions of beings tuned in to watch. Earth held its breath. The council chamber was packed, with delegates from every member species present. Day One and Nalan entered the testing chamber. The walls were transparent, allowing perfect observation. Medical teams stood ready just outside. Professor Ensu and Dr. Kickstall monitored from a control booth. "Are you ready?" Nalan asked. Day One took a deep breath. He had practiced this moment 1,000 times. He knew what to do. Focus, narrow, control. One thought. One phrase. 30 seconds. I'm ready. They moved to the center of the chamber. Nalan raised one hand slowly, telegraphing every movement. "I will make contact on your count. Take your time. Find your focus first." Day One closed his eyes. He let the chaos of his mind swirl all the fear, the hope, the memories, the awareness of billions watching, the pressure to succeed. He acknowledged it all, then began to narrow it down. The phrase came to him, clear and simple. "We mean no harm." He repeated it. Again. Again. Everything else faded to background noise. The storm was still there, still raging, but he built a wall around this one thought, protecting it, isolating it, making it the only thing that mattered. We mean no harm. We mean no harm. We mean no harm. His head began to ache. The pressure built. His brain screamed at him to let the other thoughts back in, to process the 100 things demanding attention. He fought it, held it, controlled it. Now, he whispered. Nalan's hand touched his temple. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Day One held the thought with everything he had. We mean no harm. The single phrase, the single stream, the only thing in his mind that mattered. Then he felt something. A presence. Not invasive, not violent, gentle, curious. Nalan's consciousness brushing against his, reading the intent behind the words. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. 15. Day One's control was slipping. Other thoughts crowded in. He pushed them back, focused harder. We mean no harm. 20 seconds. 20-5. Nalan gasped. Day One's eyes opened. The Palaxian was trembling, but still standing. Still conscious. Still in control. 30 seconds. Nalan's hand pulled away. She staggered backward, and Dr. Kickstall rushed in to support her. But Nalan was smiling. I felt it, she said, her voice carrying through the chamber's speakers to the watching council. I felt his intention. Genuine peace. Genuine desire for understanding. She looked at the council delegates. He meant no harm. They mean no harm. The chamber erupted in discussion. Day One collapsed to his knees, the suppressed chaos of his thoughts flooding back like a dam breaking. It felt like being able to breathe again after nearly drowning. You did it, Professor Ensu's voice came through his earpiece. You actually did it. But as Day One looked up at the council chamber through the transparent walls, he saw that not everyone was convinced. The demonstration had proven contact was possible. But was that enough to change their fear? Tomorrow, they would find out. The Grand Council chamber had never felt so heavy with anticipation. Every seat was filled. Every species that had ever joined the galactic community sent representatives to witness this moment. The vote that would determine whether humanity remained part of the stars or returned to isolation. That one sat with the human delegation in a special section, not quarantined anymore, but not fully integrated either. They existed in the limbo, waiting for judgment. On Earth, morning had just broken over Seoul. Day One's mother watched the broadcast with neighbors, crowded into her small apartment. In New York, people gathered in Times Square, staring at massive screens. In Lagos, in Mumbai, in Sao Paulo, across every continent, humanity held its breath. The demonstration yesterday proved that controlled contact is possible. Thelman began, his 6 arms gesturing formally. But we must still decide if the burden of such control is acceptable. We must decide if humanity's unique neurology represents a compatibility issue we can overcome, or an insurmountable barrier to true integration. Mary stood to deliver humanity's final statement. She had been chosen carefully older than most diplomats, with a grandmother's warmth and a professor's intellect. Someone who could speak for all of humanity without seeming threatening. Honored Council, Mary began, her voice steady. We did not ask to be different. We did not choose to have minds that operate in ways you find chaotic. But we are asking you to see past that difference to the people beneath it. She gestured to the human delegation. We are teachers and artists, scientists and dreamers, parents and children. We laugh, we cry, we fear. We are not so different from you in the ways that matter most. But you are different in ways that cause harm, Councillor Rixvan interrupted. That cannot be ignored. No, it cannot, Mary agreed. And we would never ask you to ignore it. We are willing to work with telepathic species to develop protocols, to use shielding, to ensure that what happened to Velanoth never happens again. We will take every precaution. We will accept restrictions if necessary. But please, do not exile us just for thinking differently. The chamber was quiet. Mary returned to her seat. Day One could see her hands shaking slightly. She had done well, but would it be enough? Several more delegates spoke, arguing their positions. Some favored continued integration with safeguards. Others pushed for limited membership. A few still advocated for complete quarantine. Then, Velanoth entered the chamber. The Palaxian mediator had been released from medical care just that morning. Velanoth still looked weak, moving slowly, the silvery skin duller than it should be. But the mediator had insisted on attending the vote in person. I request permission to speak, Velanoth said. Thalman hesitated. You are still recovering. Are you certain you are well enough? I must speak, Velanoth said firmly. This decision affects me more than anyone. Permission was granted. Velanoth moved to the central speaking platform, and the chamber fell silent. I have spent this week recovering from the most traumatic experience of my life, Velanoth began. But I have also spent it thinking, analyzing, trying to understand what I truly encountered in the human mind. The mediator's dark eyes swept across the chamber. I told you before that it was chaos, an ocean of consciousness that nearly drowned me. That description was accurate, but incomplete. Because in my recovery, working with Dr. Kickstall and studying human psychology, I have come to understand what that chaos truly represents. Dr. Kickstall activated a holographic display. It showed the familiar comparison, the calm river of normal thought versus the storm of human consciousness. But this time, there were annotations, highlights, patterns marked in different colors. Look closely, Velanoth said. What I initially perceived as random chaos is actually highly structured. Each stream of thought serves a purpose. The humans are not experiencing mental breakdown. They are processing social information. The display zoomed in on specific patterns. This thread here constant modeling of other people's perspectives. This one running simulations of potential conversations. This one monitoring emotional states of everyone nearby. This one predicting how others might react to various scenarios. Velanoth's voice grew stronger. Humans don't just think for themselves. They think for everyone around them, constantly, unconsciously. Every human brain is running sophisticated social simulations at all times. They are predicting, empathizing, modeling, understanding. The chamber stirred with interest. Do you know what we call a being that can perceive and understand the thoughts and feelings of others? Velanoth asked. We call them telepaths. And humans, in their own way, are the most sophisticated telepaths I have ever encountered. That's absurd, Rixvan objected. Humans cannot read minds. They cannot access thoughts directly, Velanoth agreed. But they can infer them with remarkable accuracy. They read facial expressions, body language, tone of voice. They model entire personalities in their minds and use those models to predict behavior. They feel empathy so strongly that they literally experience phantom emotions, imagining what others must be feeling. Dr. Kickstall added, we have confirmed this through brain scans. When a human sees another person in pain, their own pain centers activate. When they observe someone happy, their pleasure centers respond. They are not just understanding emotions intellectually. They are experiencing them vicariously. The chaos I encountered, Velanoth continued, was not madness. It was compassion. The human mind is chaotic because it contains not just the self, but models of everyone the human has ever met or might meet. They carry entire populations in their heads. Silence fell across the chamber. Delegates exchanged glances, reconsidering everything they thought they knew about humans. Then another voice spoke, the collective voice. The hive mind species that had supported humanity before. We told you that humans are singular beings who learn to think as a collective, the collective voice said. Now you see what we meant. Each human is a micro-collective containing multitudes. They achieved something remarkable. They evolved collective consciousness without losing individual identity. This explains much about human culture, a scholarly delegate observed. Their emphasis on individualism despite being social creatures. Their capacity for both cooperation and competition. Their art that explores multiple perspectives simultaneously. The discussion shifted. Fear began to give way to fascination. Species that had pushed for quarantine started asking questions instead. How did humans manage such cognitive load? How did they make decisions with so many competing thought streams? How did they maintain sanity? Mary answered when she could, but she was honest about the limitations. We don't fully understand our own minds. We just live with them. Sometimes the chaos is overwhelming. We have developed practices, meditation, therapy, art, music to help manage it. But it's always there. It's who we are. And you have survived, a delegate noted. Not just survived, but thrived. Built civilizations. Explored space. Created beauty. Because the chaos is not our enemy, Mary said. It's our nature. We learn to work with it rather than against it. Thalman called for order. We have heard much today. Arguments on all sides. But now we must vote. The question is simple. Does humanity remain in the Galactic Council with appropriate accommodations, or are they quarantined to their home system? The voting process began. Each species cast their decision privately, the results tallied by neutral AI systems. It took 30 minutes. 30 minutes of agonizing uncertainty. On Earth, billions waited. In Seoul, Day One's mother gripped her neighbor's hand. In the council chamber, the human delegation sat frozen. Finally, Thalman received the results. The council speaker's expression was unreadable as he reviewed them. "The vote is complete," Thalman announced, "by a margin of 67% to 33%. The council has decided Day One's hard stopped. Humanity will retain full council membership, with the following accommodations. Telepathic species will use enhanced shielding when interacting with humans. Humans will receive training in cognitive focusing techniques for diplomatic situations requiring telepathic verification. Joint research programs will be established to better understand human neurology and develop improved interaction protocols." The chamber erupted. Some delegates cheered. Others looked disappointed. The human delegation collapsed against each other in relief. On Earth, celebrations exploded in every major city. People danced in the streets, cried with joy, called loved ones to share the news. Humanity had been accepted, not despite their differences, but with accommodation for them. But Thalman wasn't finished. Additionally, the Council recognizes that humanity represents a unique form of consciousness that expands our understanding of what intelligence can be. As such, we are establishing a new research initiative to study neurodiversity across the galaxy. Perhaps there are other species we have overlooked or misunderstood. Dr. Kickstall approached the speaking platform. "I have one more thing to share. Something Elder Talshara, our oldest telepath philosopher, told me this morning." The ancient Palaxian's words appeared on displays throughout the chamber, translated into every language. "For millennia, we believed telepathy gave us superior understanding of others. We pitied species that could not share thoughts directly. But today, we learned humility.